Luke 14 and 15. Well, thinking big picture, our stories give us a good chance to review the kinds of people Jesus met, and shall we even call them categories. First, let's think of what we've met in a person like John the Baptist. He would be righteous. Here's where understanding again the idea of the Old Testament story well before we move into the New Testament story, that there were righteous people on the earth, in other words, before Jesus came to the earth. So like Psalm 1:6, the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. And that, of course, comes from that long-standing story of the Old Testament of loyalty to Yahweh and the refusal to worship other gods. So Jesus probably met numerous people like that, and John would be a good example of that. Another category that we've met, in fact, it's still there in Psalm 1:6, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. So we have the, I won't write it, but the category called the ungodly, or the wicked would be another term for that. These would be often represented in our story of Jesus by the Jews that purported to be leaders of the people, but Jesus would argue, in fact, in John 8:44, he called them children of the devil. They are against Jesus in every move that he makes. But here is where that third category comes in, one that we've met, and I would even say it's representative at times, the way the stories of Jesus move from place to place. Those who were the physical outcasts of the villages of Israel, think of the leper of Luke 5. The moral outcasts of the religion of Israel, think of the woman who wipes Jesus' feet with her hair in Luke 7. And then there are those social outcasts of the villages, or just the life of Israel in general, and that would be like the Gentiles, the Samaritan woman of John chapter 4. So let's call this category the lost. This is predicting that famous line coming up in Luke 19:10, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost." Let's define this category more carefully. They may be righteous before a story starts. I'm thinking of that Luke 7 story where the woman washes Jesus' feet. She probably was the way the story reads, a righteous woman, but she was caught in sins, as it were, over her life, or people knew her as a sinner. But Jesus says her love has forgiven her sins. Remember in that story. So I think she came into the story being righteous, but here's the point. She wasn't being treated as righteous. That was a big difference in how that story goes. A large portion of Jesus' teaching ministry will thus be to show how people who aren't deemed righteous can be righteous, just because of the situation that Israel had come to and how they had thought in very formulaic ways. Jesus had to teach that could happen. These lost were not wicked. In other words, I don't know of a name of any individual who's actually ungodly who Jesus treats this way and then brings them, as it were, into a picture of righteousness. Maybe the 10 lepers in Luke 17, 9 of whom walked away and didn't say thank you to Jesus. Maybe those 9 could be examples of that. I don't know. We don't have a lot to go on. But the key for this category, thirdly, and this is admittedly formulaic in the presentation of Jesus' life, is that this is the kind of person who is willing to do the discipleship stories or lessons that we hear. In fact, even in Luke 14, think of these words starting in verse 26. "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his mother and father, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple." I'm not saying that is not true of these people. I'm just saying that as these people, as this category of lost person listens to this kind of language, They would be, in our stories of Jesus, commonly the kind of person who would come to Jesus and wish to be allowed to be, as it were, his disciple. And Jesus, of course, welcomes them in. So how would Jesus treat these three categories? I think you could predict this, but this first category, the righteous, Jesus is honored to befriend the righteous person and consider him a true disciple, someone to confide in, enjoy conversations with deep into the night. They would have provided Jesus probably his greatest encouragement and probably his strongest means of financial and social support in his ministry. How about the ungodly, the wicked? Well, Jesus was constantly hounded by his enemies, those who worshiped the other gods of the Roman and Greek pantheon and yet paraded themselves as leaders of the Jewish people. They constantly tried to trip him up. They evoked from Jesus the strongest warnings about God's judgment to come. That would be the day of the Lord, judgments of the Old Testament, still on schedule to come, but now Jesus will be the one who will bring it. Converts among this group, that's a good question. I don't know of any. I'd have to think about that. Were there converts from this group into Jesus' ministry? That's a good question. But what's consistent about this group and this group is, and think proverbially, Jesus did not come for them. He came to seek and to save that which was lost. And that's why we have the story of the 100, or the 1 out of 100 sheep, or the 1 out of 10 coins, or the 1 out of 2 sons. It's not that these weren't loved coins and loved sheep and loved sons. It's that the story is how one person or one coin or sheep can get the attention of someone. And Jesus came because this person got his attention, as it were. And so that's why this group is certainly played up by the biblical narrator, I think, choosing to identify many of the stories of Jesus around narratives of this kind of person. They, one by one, believed in Jesus' message of his own authority and God's kingdom, and were, and here's the key, not only welcomed to the category of righteous, but made a public demonstration by Jesus in so doing.